Hi, my name is Ken.
And my name is Jason.
And today we are at the Gates of Loyang. The Gates of Loyang was published in 2009 by Z-Man Games by one of my favorites, Uwe Rosenberg.
And it's actually part of the so-called Harvest Trilogy by Uwe Rosenberg.
Which is now a quadrilogy? Four-part.
Quintilogy, I think.
Four parts of a three-part trilogy. Players take the roles of Chinese farmers selling their goods at the Gates of Loyang.
And they're actually striving to accumulate enough money to buy their way along the path to prosperity.
So without any further ado, let's play at the Gates of Loyang. So before we start at the Gates of Loyang, I just wanted to point out this fellow here is Tristan Crane.
Ah! It's me.
He is our new editor for our videos, and hopefully this will help us go a little smoother, assuming we don't break him from all of the stuff that we're throwing at him at all points in time, and our ridiculously high standards that need to be met at all points in time.
When they hired me, Kenny just looked at me, gave me the most Dolph Lundgren steel jaw look, and said, "I must break you." And then I went, okay, well, that's going to be a problem for the editing.
But he's been our editor ever since, and he started with us on the last episode, which was Rune Wars, and obviously a lengthy one, so it was definitely trial by fire.
Yeah, I think we figured if he could handle that, then he could probably handle it.
Well, I mean, this is the second Tristan. I mean, he didn't make it through Rune Wars.
Shh!
Oh, shoot!
There were others.
There were other Tristans before him.
Oh, this breaks the hole wide open.
I'm so sorry, Tristan.
I guess we're going to have to start again.
Well, we'll have to kill this one.
Yes.
And then we'll just bring on Tristan 3 next time.
Okay. Sounds like a plan.
Oh, beforehand, me and Tristan 3 actually run a podcast. It's actually Tristan 3's podcast. Do you want to explain it so that Tristan 3 doesn't have to?
Well, Tristan 3 is not... I'll explain it for you, yes. Well, we run a podcast called Everything is Fine, Nothing is Ruined. You can find us on iTunes. You can find us on pretty much any podcast system out there. And basically, I know this show is, you know, PGG for all intents purposes.
The podcast is not.
The podcast is pretty not safe for work.
We're terrible people, and we have a lot of swear words, and we are very
yeah.
Yeah.
I open it up there. Don't let your kids watch our show. Listen to our show. Sorry,
no.
You are terrible people.
Yes,
we are. Purposely so. The idea of the show is that we want to highlight things in the nerd and geek culture that you know, are positive. We tend to stray away from anything that's particularly you know, negative, that kind of thing. But you know, we try to look at good things like what are cool comic books coming out, what are cool video games to play. How about some board games? Do we play those? We certainly do. Certainly do. Ooh.
Alright, I've just programmed up Tristan 3, so he'll be in shortly. Lightning or fire?
Knife to the heart, I think.
Okay. Now that jerk's out of here.
So first of all, let's go over the components for Loyang. This is one of the player boards. These are the tokens that are included in the game. So we have satisfaction markers. This is the front and back. We have the cash coins. And yes, they are actually called cash. These are the scoring markers, the starting player tokens. These are all of the vegetable tokens that are included with the game. Wheat, pumpkins, turnips, cabbages, beans, and leeks. Finally, these are the cards that come with Loyang. So we'll go over what all the various types are here. This is the general deck. There's also a deck of public fields. We have storage carts, one for each player. Loans, which you probably don't want, but may end up having to take. And a turn summary card.
First off, take all your tokens and separate them out by type. You got your vegetables, you got your money cash, you got your tokens of various types. Take your action cards and shuffle them right up. Take your player boards and hand one out to each player. Each player then takes 10 cash, 1 home field, 1 scoring token, 1 storehouse/cart card, 1 turn summary card, enough vegetables to fill the dark spaces on their store cards. The private fields are then shuffled into 2 groups. Separate them into the separate field types. You can tell the different field types by the number of field spaces on each card. Remove any 9-space fields, because these are your home fields. Of the remaining fields, hand 2 of each field type to each player, and return the rest of the field type to the box. Each player then takes the fields they've received, separating them by type, and takes 1 of each field, stacking them together in a pile, doing the same with the remainder, and then shuffling each individual stack before placing them on top of each other. That's probably the hardest part of setup, and that's not really that hard, I guess, but just make sure you paid attention to that, and you should be fine. Choose a starting player. Say a rousing game of Dungeon Quest combat?
Sure.
Alright. Rochambeau! Rochambeau! Blah, blah. Starting with the starting player, Jason, that's you. Each player buys a vegetable from the shop and then plants that vegetable in their home field.
I think I'm going to go with a pumpkin. So that is going to cost me 4.
And I'm going to pay 3 for a wheat from my field. Note that only the vegetables shown on the fields can be purchased, so in this case we had the option of wheat, pumpkin, or radish. And then players then proceed to fill out the rest of their fields with the chosen vegetable. Like such. Wink! That's it for setup. Now you are ready to play.
So now let's go over how to play Loyang. The game is played over 9 rounds, and there are 3 phases to a round. The Harvest phase, the Card phase, and the Action phase. The Harvest phase is actually conducted simultaneously by all players. First, each player turns over the top card of his field deck. Next, he takes 1 vegetable from each planted field, adds any vegetables from last turn, and places them on his card. Once the last vegetable is removed from a private field, it is removed from the game. Common fields, however, which come from the Action deck, are actually discarded instead, so they may come up again. Next up is the Card phase. Now at the start of the Card phase, you actually shuffle any cards that were discarded during the previous turn into the deck, creating a new deck effectively, and deal each player 4 cards. Next, you do the distribution round. Now I should warn you, this is probably the most complicated part of this game. First of all, the starting player must play a card from his hand to the courtyard, which is the center of the table. Afterwards, in clockwise order, players do one of these 2 things. They can either place 1 card into the courtyard from their hand, or they can take 1 card from the courtyard and 1 from their hand, play them in the appropriate area of their board, and then place the rest of their hand in the courtyard. As to what constitutes the appropriate area, as you can see along the sides of the player board, they are actually color-coded according to the color of the cards, and there are also helpful icons in case you happen to be colorblind. The last player to choose must choose to play cards. So in this case, because 1 player has already chosen cards, the remaining player has to choose 1 card from the courtyard and 1 from their hand. There are also special rules for 2 players, which will actually be relevant here because we're playing with 2 players. At the start of his turn, the player may actually choose to flip the top card of the Action deck into the courtyard, and the starting player may actually play cards immediately if he does so. At the end of this phase, the last player to play cards gets the large starting player token. The second last gets the small token. This is only used in 3 or 4 player games though. There's also a little bit of paperwork and bureaucracy that you have to do when you actually play cards. Any regular customers that you've chosen to play, and those are the ones with the blue background, immediately get a blue satisfaction token. Any market stalls which are played immediately get the vegetables that are shown. If the player has chosen to play a field card, they actually have to pay 2 cash for the privilege, and there is actually a symbol just up in the top left corner to denote that. In the event that the player doesn't have the cash or just doesn't want to pay any, they can choose to sell to their shop, use a helper, or take out a loan, and more on those in a little bit. And now we're at the final phase of the turn, the Action phase. So turn order in a 2 or 3 player game starts with the large starting player token, then the small, and then the player without a token. In a 4 player game, the player with the large token chooses a partner who will take action simultaneously with him. The remaining players, the one with the small token and the one who was not chosen by the person with the large token, will also be paired up. When using a helper, that refers to the other players, only the player's partner is affected. So in other words, if the person with the large player token has chosen someone else to be his partner, he can only play helper cards on that other person. Now, actions can be taken in any order, and they can be repeated as many times as the player wishes, with one exception, and that's buying a 2-pack. More on that in a bit. At the end of the turn, the player must store any remaining vegetables and may move his scoring marker. So there are a number of different actions that the player can take, and we're going to go through these briefly here. First of all, a player may sow. So if they choose to do that, they take a vegetable from their cart, places it on any empty field that actually has a matching icon. He then fills the field with the same vegetable from the stock. And those will be available for harvest during the harvest phase of following turns. The player may also choose to buy a vegetable from his store for the price in the dark tag. So that's 3 for wheat, 4 for a pumpkin, 5 for a radish or a cabbage, or 6 for a bean or a leek. The player may also choose to sell a vegetable to his shop for the lighter price. In that case, it's a lot less money, but if you need the money, then it's an option. For that, you only get 1 coin for wheat, pumpkin, radish, or cabbage, and 2 coins for a bean or leek. It should be noted that spaces are vegetable specific, so you can't sell anything but a pumpkin to this space because it has a pumpkin on it. It's also important to note that this action can be taken during any phase, so you can always sell vegetables to your shop if you need the money. If you happen to have a market stall in your current setup, then you can also trade vegetables with that stall. In order to do that, you simply take any vegetable from your stock and place it in the bowl in front of the vegetable you wish to take, then take that vegetable and put it in your cart. Some market stalls will show 2 bowls in front of a vegetable, in which case you have to trade 2 vegetables for it.
Ah, hello, sir.
Hello.
Would you like to partake in any of my wares?
Actually, those look like some pretty tasty vegetables, yes.
Yes, they are the finest. I make them the best.
Actually, I could go for a carrot right now. How much money do you want?
You'll take any vegetables or grains that you have.
But I have cash.
Oh, I don't take cash here. We only take grains and other vegetables.
But you already have vegetables. Why would you want more?
Well, obviously I need to trade them.
It's not...
What happens to the next person that comes by and I don't have any vegetables? What am I supposed to do then?
It's not like I have a grain of rice.
That'll do nicely. Just put it in the bowl, please.
Well, here you go.
I said put it in the bowl. Thank you, sir. Have a nice day.
Any vegetables that were actually traded are just returned to the stock. They don't stay on the card. And if the stall is now empty, then the card itself is discarded. Another action that a player can take is to use a helper. Helper cards represent people who are helping out on the farm or with selling the vegetables. And when you choose to use a helper, you can either use the ability as written on the card, or you can choose to discard it without effect. In either case, once you actually use the ability on a helper card, it is discarded. A player may also choose to deliver to a regular customer, which are the blue ones. The spaces on the regular customer card are filled from bottom to top, and the payment shown is gained immediately. So in this case, you have to deliver a radish and a bean, and that gets you 6 for the first time, 7 for the next 2 times, and 8 for the final time. If a player does not deliver to a regular customer during his turn, flip their satisfaction to the red side. If it is already red, then they must pay 2 cash immediately. Once all 4 lines are filled, the card is discarded. The player may also choose to deliver to a casual customer, and he does this by placing the 3 pictured vegetables on the card from his cart. He then immediately gets payment. The payment is actually variable based on his ratio of regular to casual customers. Basically, if he has the same number of regular and casual customers, then he gets the price shown, in this case 9. If he has more casual customers, then the price is reduced by 2, so in this case he would get 7. However, if he has more regular customers, the price goes up by 2, in which case he gets 11. Immediately after a delivery is made to a casual customer once, the card is discarded. The final action is buying a 2-pack, and again, this is something that might confuse people, so bear with me. This action can only be taken once per turn, unlike all of the other actions. And it actually costs cash equal to the higher of the number of market stalls or helpers the player has. So that is, conveniently, these two on the same side. so whichever one has the most. In this case, there is one of each, so the cost would simply be 1. When taking this action, the player flips 2 cards from the action deck. He may choose to keep neither, one of them, or both of them. If he chooses to only keep one, then he simply places it in the appropriate area and fills up the market stall or whatever is required. If he chooses both, however, one of them must be placed on top of the other. Both cards are then placed in the top card's area with the info line of the bottom card showing. When the top card is discarded, the bottom card is immediately moved to its appropriate area and set up if required. If a field is chosen, then its cost must be paid immediately. You can't wait until it's flipped up if it is the bottom card. At the end of the action phase, a player must store any remaining vegetables that he has. So anything that was gained through trades or whatnot during the turn. Initially, his storehouse card can only hold 1 vegetable, which is shown by the 1 here. Any vegetables that he has in excess of this are actually lost. So now might be a good time to sell off any extras that he might have. In addition, you can always pay 2 coins at any point to flip the storehouse card, in which case it becomes upgraded and can store 4 from now on. After vegetables are stored, the player may finally purchase movement on the Path of Prosperity, which is the path winding along the player board here. The first space purchased on each turn costs 1 cash. Each additional space costs the amount shown on the space. For instance, if I was already at 4 on the path, then I could pay 1 to move up to the 5 spot, but if I wanted to move up to the 6 spot on the same turn, I would actually have to pay 6. I should also mention these loan cards. Hopefully you won't actually have to deal with those, but in case you do, a player may take out a loan at any time during the game. When taking a loan, the player receives 5 cash and a loan card. At the end of the game, the player must move his scoring marker back 1 space for each loan he has. Loans cannot be repaid, so as soon as you take that loan card, you are committed to going back 1 space at the end of the game. So try and use those very sparingly. So the game ends at the end of the 9th round, and the home fields are actually a good counter for that is the round when you're going to be taking the last vegetable from that field. So after that turn is completed, players must first move their scoring marker back 1 space for each loan that they have, and then the winner is the player furthest along the path. In the event that 2 or more players are on the same space on the path, the first tiebreaker is the amount of cash remaining, so whoever has the highest. If that is still a tie, then it is the number of vegetables remaining in fields and storehouse. In the event that it's still a tie, well, you're just going to have to share the win. So that's it for gameplay. Now let's go to some example turns. Alright, so first of all, the first part of the harvest phase is to harvest 1 vegetable from each field. We've already done that here. The next step is to turn over 1 private field, so we're going to do that now. Alright, so next we're going to go on to the distribution phase. So each player is going to get 4 cards. I have already been chosen as the starting player, so I get to choose what to do first. Now, as noted, because we're playing a 2-player game, at this point I can choose to either play a card from my hand into the courtyard, or I can flip over a card from the top of the action deck into the courtyard. In this case, I'm going to choose to flip over a card into the courtyard. So at this point, I could choose to snatch that up and play another card from my hand and basically let Ken take it away. I'm going to pass it on to Ken for now, though.
Alright, I'm going to choose to play a card from my hand into the courtyard and pass it back to Jason.
I'm going to choose to play this card from my hand into the courtyard.
This card from my hand into the courtyard.
This into the courtyard.
I am going to choose to flip a card.
Card from my hand.
Card from my hand. And now that Jason and I are down to 1 card apiece, we can only choose to either flip cards or finish off this round.
I'm going to flip card.
I'm going to choose to take the card I played here and the card remaining in my hand and place them both. I'm going to fill up my market stall while Jason decides on his turn.
Well, at this point, because Ken has already gone, I have no choice but to play the card in my hand and to choose 1 from the courtyard to play. I am going to choose this market stall. Now we move on to the action phase. Finally, at the end of the card phase, the large starting player token is going to go to the player who went out last. In this case, it was me, so it stays with me. And all of the cards remaining in the courtyard are discarded.
Bye-bye.
Now we move on to the action phase. So, because I am the starting player, I get to do all of my actions first. So first of all, I am going to take my pumpkin that I harvested. I am going to use it to trade in for a leek. So this pumpkin is going back to the supply, and I now have a leek in my storehouse. Then I'm going to take the leek, and I'm going to plant it on this field, because there is a leek symbol here. That means I get to place leeks on the 2 remaining spaces. Boop, boop. And I will get to harvest one of those at the start of each following turn until they are, well, gone. Since I've taken all the actions that I want to take, first of all I have to store any remaining vegetables. I actually don't have any. I've used all of the ones that I acquired during the turn. Then I can choose to buy my way up the path of prosperity. So because this is the first point of the turn, I only have to pay 1 for the first space. It is 1 anyway, but that won't always be the case. I can now choose to pay 2 to buy my way onto the second space. And I think I'm actually going to do that. Now it is Ken's turn.
Alright, first off, I'm going to trade my wheat over here for this radish, and I'm going to immediately plant that radish over here. Doot, doot, doot. And, well, seeing as I can't really afford to do a whole lot else, and there's not really a whole lot else I can do, I'm going to pay 1 to step onto the path of prosperity, and then I'll get change for step 2, not wanting to fall behind. And that's my turn.
So then we move on to the next turn. Alright, so starting back at the top, we're first going to harvest 1 vegetable from each field and place it in our carts. Next, we turn over 1 private field. Then we go on to the card phase. So there actually are cards in the discard pile, and they actually get shuffled back into the deck. So you always start with a fresh deck of cards. So again, each player gets 4 cards. And again, I am the starting player, so I get to choose what to do first. I am going to choose to play this card from my hand into the courtyard.
This card from my hand into the courtyard.
I'm going to play this card from my hand into the courtyard.
I'm going to flip a card.
I'm also going to choose to flip a card.
I'm going to choose to take the card that Jason just flipped. And the card from my hand. Placing the other 2 back into the field.
Okay, so at this...
Just a second. Do, 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 do. That's what I meant. No, wait. Do, 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 do. Sorry. Just a... But I have a... What? Ow! Alright, fine, you can go.
So since Ken has gone out, and I'm the last person remaining, I have to choose to play 1 card from my hand and 1 card from the courtyard. In this case, I'm going to choose to play this casual customer, and I'm going to choose to play this regular customer. So again, all of these cards go to the discard pile, and since I was the last person to go out, I again get the starting player token. So now we move on to the action phase, and I get to do things. So first of all, I am actually going to sell both of the vegetables that I currently have to my market stall. So that gets me 3 more coins. I'm going to use all of my current cash to purchase a bean from my market stall. And then I'm going to immediately plant that bean on this field. So that's basically all I can do. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to buy my way up the path to prosperity, and because this regular customer did not get a delivery, I have to flip this over to the dissatisfied part. I should note, though, that doesn't really cost me a whole lot right now, and from here on out, I'm going to be producing at least 1 pumpkin and 1 bean every turn, so I am going to be able to deliver to the customer in following rounds. So this is a strategy you should really keep in mind. It's an important thing to know. So, since I'm done, Ken, take it away.
First off, I'm just going to note the ability of the maid. In this action phase, it may exchange vegetables 1-to-1 at market stall spaces where I would normally have to trade in 2 vegetables to receive 1.
Nice.
So the first thing I'm going to do is take this radish and trade it in for a bean. Normally I would have to trade 2 for that bean, but not today. I'm going to immediately plant that bean. Boop, boop. So then the maid is discarded. She's done her help. She's great. I'm then going to spend 4 to buy a pumpkin, and then use the pumpkin and the wheat to get 6. So that actually puts me 2 up from where I was just at. I'm actually going to choose, because I'm a little ahead here now, to spend 2 to flip my cart over so I can actually hold 4 vegetables between turns now as opposed to just 1. And since I have some cash, I'm definitely going to buy myself 1 step up the path of prosperity. I don't have 4 to jump the next step though, so I'm just going to stick with that for now.
So now that Ken's done, that is basically the end of the turn, and again we would start with the harvest phase again.
Alright, that was at the Gates of Loyang. Jason, what do you think?
Personally, I really like this game. It's got to be one of my favorite games as far as just components goes, because the artwork's amazing. I love the little wooden vegetables, you know, of each type.
This was the first harvesting game I actually played with actual wooden vegetables. Yep. The first copy of Agricola is the one that just has like the discs and the squares and stuff like that. And then when I saw this, I was like, there is possible for Agricola to have these too. And then they released that, and I had to get it.
Yeah, so I mean, I think the components are amazing. I think the game plays really well. It's relatively easy to learn. I am only going to give it a 4 out of 5 instead of the 5 though, because I feel that there are a few things as far as mechanics go that it's just too difficult for some people to grasp. Mm-hmm. Like the whole card drafting mechanic is really confusing for some people, and the whole start player thing, especially when you have the 4-player games and you have to do the whole partners thing, just, you know, totally throws people off. It's
also a little unnecessary too. It kind of feels...
Yeah.
It feels like it's one of those steps that could just be kind of like just dropped out, like as a house rule.
Probably, yes.
Yeah.
So.
I do like At the Gates of Loyang. It is the second game I played in Uwe Rosenberg's Harvest Trilogy of 4. I haven't actually played Le Havre. I know you have it, but I haven't actually played it.
It's a pretty hefty game.
And I really want to play Ora Labora, but that's the 4th part of the Harvest Trilogy. Big fan of Loyang. I'm going to give Loyang 3.5 meeples, though, out of 5. And the reason why I'm giving it just a little less than Jason is because, while I do enjoy this game, because it's kind of like a lighter version of Agricola. You can bring someone into this game who was like, I like Agricola, but I feel it's too complicated, and this game is usually pretty good for them. But I feel like this game has less replayability than Agricola, and that's the game I compare it to because it's made by the same guy, it's in the same series of games. I just feel like I have to give it a little less because I get kind of bored of this game pretty quickly. Like, the first time I was introduced to Agricola, me and a friend, we played it for basically a week straight, and we just played it so much, like daily, a couple times a day. We were both really sick and both off of work at that time, so that kind of helped as well. But I remember playing At the Gates of Loyang, and I remember really enjoying it. And just eventually, though, after a few games, I just kind of got, I don't want to say sick of it, but it kind of ran into fatigue for me. I just don't feel like it has as much replayability as Agricola, but I still feel like it's an excellent game. And even actually today when we were playing, it's the first time I've really even touched this game in a long time, I was really enjoying myself. So it's not to say that you will always have that, but if you are one of those kinds of people who likes to play a game like a lot, or you have like the game you want to play, At the Gates of Loyang might work for you. It just doesn't for me in that same way.
Well, it's one of those games where you know, you can pick it up and dust it off after a little while, and you know, you kind of enjoy it again for a while. Mm-hmm. So it's good over the long run, I suppose, just not for short spurts.
Yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm. And I mean, if you are playing it alongside other Uwe Rosenberg games, it's actually probably a nice little breath of fresh air, actually, compared to the other ones, because it plays quicker, and it is a softer game.
Yep.
Take that as you will, for better, for worse. I feel like that's actually a positive for it, and it could be a bit of a negative, but depending on what games you're playing around it. So that's going to give us a total of 7.5 out of 10 meeples, which is a pretty solid score. That's definitely above average.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I would highly recommend At the Gates of Loyang if you haven't tried it already. Hopefully after this video we've either inspired you to get it, or we've made it help make up your mind as to whether or not you're going to buy it next week.
So I guess that's all for today. Mm-hmm. Join us next time for Furstenfeld.
Yes, Furstenfeld. In the meantime, see you later and have good games.